never talk to people about hazardous waste while they were eating. So I hope that I don't turn your stomach. And I was trying to figure out how to pull this together. And one of the things you may say, what's the relationship between extension and hazardous waste, and why should we be talking about hazardous waste? And my job really for the extension is to educate our entire community about things they can do to prevent the degradation of our groundwater, our drinking water, and the water that we use. If we weren't running these programs, all the food and water that we consume that's grown and used locally would be contaminated or contaminated to a greater degree. So my job at the extension is focused on educating folks about common household hazardous waste, what they can do to reduce the amount of hazardous products they use, and what they should do with the products that they've accumulated. It's a shame it wasn't Saturday. I know everyone would be here and be glad they could have gone to Mashpee and seen me running a hazardous waste program where we'll have about 400 cars show up with between 10 and 15 tons of hazardous waste. The hazardous waste programs are really interesting. The collections are interesting to me because I get to see what's actually in our communities. And I can tell you that if your neighborhood was regulated like businesses are regulated, you'd have a lot of folks to answer to. But because homeowners have an exemption and you never know what's in your neighbor's house, what we try to do is make it as easy as possible for folks who want to dispose of their hazardous waste in a responsible manner to come to a collection. They're greeted by our volunteers who talk to them about what is and is not hazardous. Some people bring latex paint, not hazardous, can be dried up and put in your household trash. Other people bring oil-based paints or pesticides. Those are hazardous. We make sure that we give them an opportunity to bring them in and we dispose of them through a vendor. Hey, how you doing? Got like a Superman cape on. I thought that's what it was, sorry. So in any case, So one of the things that I hear at each of the collections, I get between 800 and 1,000 calls a year. The people ask me, what do we do with this type of waste or what that type of waste? And one of the things that became really obvious to me was that people had a lot of questions about unwanted medications. We hear a lot about their disposal. It's been in the news recently. And we know that's one of the #1 new emerging contaminants that we have to deal with. What do you do with unwanted medications when you're done with them? So we created an education program to educate folks on how to properly dispose of their unwanted medications. We put a flyer together and labeled the program. A lot of different community groups are doing this across the country. Called it Crush It, Don't Flush It. So the concept is you want to crush your medications and put them in an unusable form in your household trash, because your trash, with the exception of Bourne, 14 of the 15 Cape Cod towns' trash goes to an incinerator in Rochester where it's burned at 2,000 degrees. Now if you do an unwanted medication collection program, all that waste is collected and burned at 2,000 degrees at an associated cost. So by every individual homeowner taking their waste, putting it in the trash in an unusable form, we tell people open a Ziploc bag, put their meds in there, squirt some alcohol-based hand sanitizer. This degrades the pills to an unusable form. If you don't have that, you can use kitty litter or coffee grounds or whatever you have. If you can effectively make your meds useless, put them in your trash and they get burned. And that's how we want to dispose of them. We just paid to have some tear sheets made up that will be placed at every pharmacy on Cape Cod. These tear sheets will be up so that folks who want to dispose of their waste or purchasing medications will be able to tear this off and explain or read how to dispose of their unwanted medications. I've also worked with a few police departments on Cape Cod who want to do unwanted medication collection programs. They're fairly complicated because prescription medications have to be transferred from the prescribee to a law enforcement agent. Every single pill has to be inventoried by a pharmacist, and then they all have to go for disposal at an associated cost. We did a collection May 1st in Barnstable. We did a 3-hour collection. We collected 52,000 prescription medication pills, 120 pounds of over-the-counter drugs, and some miscellaneous items that I brought to a hazardous waste collection. The over-the-counter pills can all go to be incinerated at CMAS. Some of the prescription medications were able to be sorted and brought to CMAS to be incinerated. And then there's a large group of medications that actually have to be taken by a reverse distributor, and we pay for their disposal. Police departments all, they have their perspective is they want the medications out of homes so that they're not being improperly used. I think most of us know that some of the narcotics, oxycodone and Oxycontin, if you talk to any police department, that's the #1 abused drug on the Cape. People are switching away from things like heroin, and they're going to these regulated substances. They're easy to get. They know there's a little bit more quality control, and so drug users are using them. So police departments occasionally do these collections. I advise them, and I help them through the process. But in general, we have so many people and there's so much medication, we just want to prevent that medication from being flushed. That was the traditional wisdom. And flushing medications, as we all know, eventually leads to that medication leaching into our groundwater. We do have a couple other programs. I have a mercury collection program, a sharps container program where we distribute sharps to every fire department on the Cape, and residents can go get the sharps containers for free. Fill them up, bring them back to the fire department, and the county pays for the disposal. We have a flares collection program, road flares, and other flares contain perchlorate. It's a salt-like chemical. One of these flares can contaminate 1.3 million gallons of drinking water. Perchlorate's a thyroid inhibitor, so we want to collect these and make sure they don't get into our groundwater. I won't go into the details of those other programs, but those are the kind of things that Extension is doing to protect your groundwater and educate the residents of Cape Cod and the visitors of Cape Cod. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we can chat afterwards.
Mike, you might mention that in the mercury collection, we do get some support from the vendor.
Right, and I should mention, as Commissioner Doherty mentioned, mercury, the mercury collection program funding is provided by the Covanta CMAS facility, there where our trash gets incinerated, and that money comes from tipping fees when trash is disposed on Cape Cod. So,
what do you do with old TVs or computers, things like that?
It's a great question. So old televisions and electronics, as most of you know, everyone has, I would guess, at least one television that's the older cathode ray tube. Right. Everyone has the old computer monitors. Those contain an average of about 6 pounds of lead. Because they're so common, they're not regulated as a hazardous waste. They're regulated more as a universal waste. You still have to dispose of them properly. They're still, even though they're not regulated as haz waste, they are hazardous. But those can be brought to every transfer station on Cape Cod, except for Sandwich. They have a separate program. And you bring them in, you pay the associated fee. It's usually $10 to $20 to dispose of the unit. And the reason they cost so much is the United States government has cracked down on us shipping our electronic waste to other countries like China and Africa. So we disassemble them in America now. There's an associated cost with that, but that's a good thing. Even though it's a bummer to pay 10 or 20 bucks to get rid of a TV, you're protecting our environment and protecting potentially having young people and underprivileged people abused in other countries.
Can you do it in Falmouth?
I'm sorry?
Dispose of it in Falmouth?
Yes, you can bring your unwanted, or you can bring your television or cathode ray tube to your dump in Falmouth and pay the associated cost. Okay. And some Falmouth residents, because of the situation with the dump changing, have also gone to Bourne. As long as you're paying for the disposal of it, you can bring it to most transfer stations.